Good morning. Welcome to the teaching of the inner Christ. We are a New Age teaching, a metaphysical teaching. We assist all who so desire in checking into that center of divinity that is within us and making conscious contact with our higher nature. Today's reading comes to us from a book. It's called 365 Days of Richer Living. Beautiful. And it's authored by Ernest Holmes and Raymond Charles Barker. And it says, God around me, God within me, all is well. The Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God, and Father of all, who is above all, and through all, and in you all, and me all too. We live in the midst of an unlimited presence, forever in action as an unlimited mind. It created us, and it sustains us. It operates through us. All it asks of us is our recognition of it. As we affirm the presence and the power of God in our lives, something happens within us to improve us. This can be tested by anyone who wishes to see what will happen when God works his experiences. It requires no advanced study, no educational background, no particular volume or posture. The process of approaching the deity is merely one of knowing it, knowing that it is, and that it abides within. What we affirm, we become. As we affirm God, we actually become sons of God and heirs to all that God is and has. Draw nigh unto God, and he will draw nigh unto you. There is only one presence, God, and I am in it. There is only one power, God, and it acts through me this day. There is only one mind, God, and it is my mind now. All around me, in every instance, it's the same presence that unfolded in Jesus. The same mind which acts through him now is in action through me. I am an heir of all that God is and has, and I know it. I live in a spiritual universe governed by the spiritual law that is always working for my good. I am safe, for God is with me. I am wise, for God is me as my consciousness. There is nothing to fear. God around me, God within me, all is well with me today, and with you as well. Thank you, Ernie, and thank you, Charles. So today, we celebrate the first time that Babaji appeared to Ann Meyer McKeever at the Russ Auditorium on October 19th, 1962. What an amazing story of how the teaching of the inner Christ came into being and brought forth for us a teaching of our own inner Christ. Now, Anne, before she made her transition, did do her autobiography, and it is called Who is With Me? And I'd like to read a little bit about how she first had this presence. And it's from chapter 2 on page 5, if you have the book, and it's called Who is With Me in This Room? The date of October 19th, 1962 is forever indelibly engraved in my mind. That morning around 8 o'clock, I had sent Barry and Kathy off to school, and my husband Bill off to work, and had finished washing the breakfast dishes. I walked into the living room, and suddenly there was a strange feeling that I was not alone. There was a presence, a very strong presence in the room with me. Someone else, someone I could not see, was with me in that room. I cried out into the empty room, "Who is with me?" Who is in this room? Hey, you, whoever you are, what do you want? What do you want with me? There was no answer. After breakfast on that particular Tuesday morning, Bill said, let's go to the civic music concert tonight. We haven't gone anywhere together for a long time. So even though I would rather have gone to my class meeting at the Church of Religious Science that night, I planned to go to the concert with Bill. I had no idea that my decision to do that was to change the course of my entire life. That evening, having arrived an hour early at the old Russ Auditorium of the San Diego High School, which was the only concert hall in the city at that time, Bill had promised to help the Civic Music Society by punching tickets as the audience arrived. And so I left him at the front door and walked alone down the center aisle of empty seats of the empty hall. In the middle row of seats, I chose a seat in the center section, second from the aisle, leaving the aisle seat for Bill. Waiting for the concert to begin, I spent the time reading the Alcoholics Anonymous booklet on 12 steps, which was assigned reading for my religious science practitioner's course. As the auditorium began to fill, 3 people came down the aisle to my row, 2 men and a woman. One man asked the other, who was a tall, slim man, is this where you want to sit? And the tall, slim man replied, yes. And I noticed that he had a light baritone voice, very soft. The first man, who seemed to be engineering the procedure, said to the woman, you go first. And so she passed in front of me and took the third seat over to my right, and the first man followed her, and he took his seat, the second seat. And then came the tall, slim man who brushed in front of me and sat down in the seat to my right. I stood and allowed him to pass in front of me, and I found that I could not sit down again, for the man beside me had placed his arms on both armrests, and there was no room for me to sit down without bumping against my arm against his. In our world, we didn't bump or touch strangers. Boy, that's a long time ago. I waited for a moment, and he seemed to realize that in the theater, one does not claim both armrests on one seat. He pulled his arm in so I could sit down. Immediately I knew this was no ordinary man. I sensed that sitting beside me was a very wise, quiet, extremely gentle person. I sensed that he had a very high consciousness, and it seemed to me that he must be a wonderful, important leader or ruler of some sort. Perhaps he was the president of some worldwide business firm. If so, he was a different kind of businessman. A very quiet, wise, and peaceful one. Was he some great religious leader? A Buddhist priest? Somehow I knew that he was not connected with the teaching that I followed in religious science. I knew that he did not use scientific prayer treatment as we did to fulfill our desires. It was not necessary for him to pray or to treat for what he wanted. All he did was to think his desires into the universal mind, and they manifested. Wow, and so it began. That was her first meeting. So, sometime later, she and her husband were going through a divorce, and that was when that's when, through her church, she met Peter Meyer and his wife, who were also going through some troubles of their own. And that's quite a story into itself. And I invite you to get the book, which, by the way, happens to be on special this month, I think. Is that not so? Yes. So if you get in touch with the Teaching of the Inner Christ, if you call them up or contact them online, they'll let you know what that is. But in any case, it's quite a story. They began channeling together, Peter and Ann, and sometimes Babaji's face would superimpose over Peter's, and I understand sometimes it would superimpose over Ann's as well. And they had some confusion about that. How could Babaji be a part of both Peter and Ann? They didn't know, but they figured that it must be so because this is what was happening, and so they accepted that. And so on page 167 of this beautiful book, we find the incorporation of the T.I.C. So following the policies and procedures of the International Association of Religious Science Churches, we required that T.I.C. centers have at least 50 members. So we called our group a San Diego Study Group. It was worked diligently to gain the 50 required signatures for membership of the charter, membership for our charter as a church or as a center. It seemed to take forever for a membership to grow to 50. New people would come to T.I.C. and then leave because the group was too small, and we were not growing fast enough. When finally our people began to marry one another and establish T.I.C. families, we were on our way. In the meantime, Peter had come to, the time had come for Peter to create our charter, for Peter and me to create our charter. We held a meditation session with a table session to contact the Christ teachers and bring through T.I.C.'s charter. Babaji spoke through Peter and gave us the following words for the charter. Be it known that a new teaching has been established for the purpose of assisting every human being in contacting the center of divinity within himself through the development of his inner sensitivity. He may commune with his Christ self and receive the spiritual gifts of prophecy, speaking in the Spirit, seeing visions, and the greatest gift of all, the Christ consciousness of love. Therefore it shall teach a God consciousness in man as man by uncovering his true spiritual nature and his relationship to God and to the universe. This seemed to be a daring declaration, but it sounded right. We thanked Babaji for the words of the charter, and then suddenly I felt a strong presence of Ernest Holmes, and a shot of spiritual energy swept through my body. I cried, Ernest Holmes is here to say something. And Ernest spoke through me and gave the following addition to the charter. The teaching acknowledges that all is mind, and that the power of the mind, universal God, through the Word, individualizes itself through every person as the only real cause of his experience and the only authority in his life. And this was the final paragraph. In order that the teaching may be supported and furthered, we, the following, have joined together under the name of the Society for the Teaching of the Inner Christ. The following spring, we gathered 85 signatures on our charter. Thus we were able to call ourselves the San Diego Center. And that's the beginning. But you see, it took a few years for it to all come together. But the beginning, the very beginning, was that day, October 19, 1962. That's a date that's easy for me to remember. That was the year that I graduated from high school, so I was just a very young person. So, that's how the teaching began. It's an amazing journey from then to now, and T.I.C. has taught thousands and thousands of people about their own inner Christ connections. Many of them have gone on to start their own groups or organizations, and many have given credit in publications for their spiritual journey. Some, most of the time, when we celebrate this day, the people who are in our congregation have a chance to share the reaching of their own inner Christ, the day that they came to understand. But because of what we're having now, because of this seeming appearance of a pandemic, we won't be able to do that. So I thought that I would share with you my coming to the teaching of the inner Christ, if that's all right with you. Okay. Well, it all began for me when I was reading a book called Stranger in a Strange Land. I was a voracious reader, and still am. But that book touched me. Now that was a book, it's a science fiction book, written in 1961 by an American author called Robert L. Heinlein. And he tells of the story of a Valentine Michael Smith, a human who comes to Earth in early adulthood after being born on the planet Mars and raised by Martians. And he explores his interaction with the eventual transformation of the terrain culture. It was a fascinating story because when he came, he was able to ascertain what people were thinking, and he had many other things. The book so fascinated me. I was discussing it with a friend of mine. And she said, you know, if you like that book, I have another one for you. I'll bring it tomorrow. And so the next day she brought the book, and she had it in a brown paper bag, and I opened it up, and she said, don't look at it here, look at it later. And I got it home, and I saw that it was a book entitled Being a Christ by Ann and Peter Meyer. And I thought, oh my goodness, I shoved it back in the bag, and I put it in my bottom drawer where nobody else would see it. And I looked at that, and being a very Catholic person, a practicing Catholic, I realized that this might be a book that maybe I shouldn't be reading. It might not be one that I wouldn't show it to the priest, like some other books I might ask, is this an okay book to read? But I was fascinated with it because I wanted to learn more. And as I began to read the book, it just resonated so deeply with me. And I would read a chapter, and then I would try to, and it encouraged meditation. So I would try to do meditation as I understood it at the time. I just thought that was I thought it was like contemplative prayer is what I thought it was. And so I would do that. And then I got to the lesson where it talked about different ways of meditating. So I would try these different ways of meditating. And the one that felt comfortable for me would be where I would lay on my bed with my hands up by my side and relax my body all the way up and down. And then relax my mind, and then my subconscious mind, you know, that hand that's in the book that tells you how to go through those steps. That worked very well for me. And I would do this every time. I would read the book a little bit, and then I would do this. And then I would read a little more, and I would do this. And I would keep saying, okay, inner Christ, come to me. Let me know that this is real, or if it's not. And I just kept doing it. And then one night, all of a sudden, it felt like my body lifted off the bed. It felt like I was floating. And a little thing felt like somebody went like this on the top of my head, knock, 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 and then it dropped down here, and it felt like a click, and opening up my third eye, and I saw a beautiful lavender color. And I thought, oh, this must be it. Oh my gosh, this must be it. Who are you? Because it said we should ask who are you, and I asked who are you, and the light said, I am Bali. And I said, wow. Anyway, I was so excited, and I just basked in it for a while, and I think I might have gone to sleep, because the next day when I got up, I was so full of energy, I was just bouncing around, and I couldn't wait to tell my friend about it. And when I did, she said, oh, you have to meet Ann. You have to meet Ann Meyer. So I said, who's Ann Meyer? Well, she's the one of the ladies who wrote the book. Oh, yes, that's right. And where is she? Well, she's at her T.I.C. center. And you need to come there. You need to really take the classes there. And I said, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. Number one, I don't know where it is. Well, anyway, she took me there, and we looked at, and we went in, and I met Ann Meyer. And she was really a loving person. And I didn't really connect her with the leader of the thing. I knew she was a co-author of the book, but I didn't really connect it. And then she said, well, you need to meet her, and you need to come to church. You need to come to a service. And I said, I'm a Catholic. I can't do that. Well, she said, well, just visit. I said, oh, okay, I'll do that. What time? 10 o'clock Sunday. Okay. So I went to Mass early. Then I came to T.I.C. And as I was walking down the center aisle on 42nd Street, I got about actually, I wanted to sit in the back, but my friend said, no, let's go forward. And I said, well, okay. So as I was walking down, I think it was Mabel Jessup stood up in front of me, and she said, may I give you a hug? And I said, do I know you? And she said, maybe in another lifetime. I was just about ready to leave right there. And I thought, wow, this is really strange. Well, anyway, I got through the service. But I need to tell you about a dream I had the night before. The night before, I had a dream because I knew that I had been told that they did singing and dancing and choirs and guitar music and stuff like that there. and that the minister that was going to be teaching, was going to be speaking, was a woman, woman priest. Oh my goodness! So anyway, in my dream the night before I went, I had this dream of a woman in bishop's clothing with a big mitre hat, dancing around and carrying on. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And then meeting Mabel Jessup and that exchange, I was really freaked out. But in any case, Anne was such a loving person. And we had a nice counseling with her and my friend after church. We tried to convince her that she needed to come to our school and do a class. And we had to really do a selling to her. We told her that we had some teachers who also wanted to take the class, and we had enough teachers that got her coming. So that was the very first, to my knowledge, outreach class that they had. And it was at Juarez Lincoln Elementary School in San Diego, California, where my children were going to school. And so we had the class, and that was where I first met Marvin Dillard. He was a minister at the time, and he was her teaching assistant and helped us with our meditation. And he became a very good friend of mine, too, over the years. In any case, that's my story of coming to the teaching of the inner Christ, and how I first began to learn about my own inner Christ and what to do with it. Now, you've got it, what do you do with it? Well, you listen, you pray, and you meditate, and then you get into class. And you learn how to love yourself through this wonderful inner Christ. So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So there is that inner Christ. That was the coming of my inner Christ. And I would love for us to be able to go out and tell stories about everyone here and about their beginning and their coming together with their own inner Christ. And if you would like more wonderful people out in computer land, get in touch with the Teaching of the Inner Christ, as you have this right here, or go to teachingoftheinnerchrist.org and look at the various centers. And I happen to do the outreach ministry, and we do online classes, but we have centers and other places and study groups as well. So if you're interested in that, that would be a good way to start. I thank you all for coming today, all 3 of you, 4 of you, 5, and appreciate your time and your energy and all of the people in computer land. Thank you so much, and God bless.